Okay, when I was in school, there was a form of life called Cro-Magnon. That term is no longer used for a very good reason. Right now, the term has been changed to anatomically modern human. Anatomically modern human for a very good reason, because that's what it is. Cro-Magnon, anatomically modern human, showed up on this earth 200,000 years ago, and for all intents and purposes, it has not changed to this day. If you take an anatomically modern human, a Cro-Magnon skeleton right there, and you look at my skeleton here, except for their leg bones being a little thicker because presumably they walked more than we do today, you cannot tell them apart. Proportions are the same. Cranial capacity is the same. We haven't changed in 200,000 years. We showed up 200,000 years ago. We haven't changed. That's not Darwinian. Now, I don't know what happened scientifically. I have my own personal ideas, my own personal beliefs. But scientifically, what we're being taught is not supported by the facts on the one hand, and on the other hand, the new discoveries are not being allowed to be shared in the classrooms, the textbooks, and the media. Now, we have a whole new generation of young people that want the answers just like we did. They're going to spend their lives trying to find out who we are, but they're being limited by the false assumptions that are being required in the classroom today. I believe there's a problem with that. I think there's a problem with that. So that's where I am with this. So because this is the two-hour absolute bottom line update. You want the update on the missing link between us and them. I know you all want it, right? Okay, here is the update on the missing link between us and them. The update is it's still missing. And here is why I think it probably will be. This is another version of a family tree. Here is human right up here, Homo sapiens. And now you see we're all by ourselves there. My sense is about a year or two from now, I think we're going to be looking at this, and we're not going to be at the top of a tree. We're going to have our own bush. I think it's going to be very short because there's nobody but beneath us, because it is suggested we are our own species. We don't know where we came from. In the new book, I talk about the DNA. I'm just going to tell you, the DNA is unlocking the whole story. What scientists are saying right now is the DNA that allows us to be who we are, that makes us human, specifically chromosome number 2. If you all want some light bedtime reading, go look at chromosome number 2. That the genes that make the DNA, that give us the traits and the characteristics of who we are, they could not have formed the way they did through natural processes. And then the scientists stopped there. Because that's all you can say scientifically. They cannot tell us why. I can't tell you why. I can tell you that if we want to get to the bottom of who we are, we need to go right here. We appeared on earth 200,000 years ago. If we want the truth, the deep truth of our existence, we need to answer that question. We can share what has been found in the past, but allow the new discoveries to be incorporated. Allow those new discoveries to be shared. So, Darwin said this. He said if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ, now he didn't even know about DNA in his time. If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous, successive, slight modifications, he says, my theory would absolutely break down. Darwin allowed for his theory to break down. It has broken down. Mainstream will not allow it to be modified. It will not allow it to change. And DNA is changing all that. So, deep truth, beyond any reasonable doubt, evolution does not explain human origins. Now, as a scientist, I have to tell you, be very honest, evolution is a fact. We see it in the fossil record for other forms of life. It's absolutely happened. To extrapolate what we see for other forms to human doesn't make sense in light of the evidence. So I just wanted to say, and I go into more detail in the book, but this is where I wanted to be with this today. The next part of Darwin's assumptions, right here. And I love it when he begins by casting doubt on what he's about to say. I like that. So what he does is he's looking in nature at the way animals and insects treat one another, and he's saying that those are small expressions in one place of a general rule that applies to all life, including us. Okay, so here's his exact words. He says, it may not be a logical deduction, but to my imagination, It is far more satisfactory to look at instincts such as young birds ejecting foster brothers. He looked at birds in a nest, and then when another bird would come that was different from the ones that were there, they would kick that bird out and leave it to die. Okay, so it makes more sense to look at birds ejecting foster brothers from the nest, ants making slaves of other ants. When other ants made slaves of species that were different from them or different from themselves in some way, he said these are small consequences of one general law leading to the advancement of all beings. The law is this: multiply, vary, let the strongest live and the weakest die. Let the strongest live and the weakest die. This is a dangerous way of thinking. And it plays a powerful role in your life right this minute. I'll just tell you right now, the economic system that is breaking down on a global basis has its foundations: let the strongest live and the weakest die. The ideas of corporations as they stand today, corporations can work well, but if the corporation is only about the bottom line, only about the money, and it's not about people, let the strongest live and the weakest die. These are the ways of thinking that are collapsing around us today, and they're based on false assumptions. Based on false assumptions of science. Since 1859, think about this, the world as we know it is largely in place since 1859 based on what we believe to be true. So since 1859, the widespread embracing, let the strongest live and the weakest die, has formed the basis for nations, for the way that we treat one another in our own countries, in other countries, form the basis for when we go to war, when we share resources, or when we let others fend for themselves because there's not enough to go around. Since 1859, some of the most twisted, horrid, and dramatic examples based upon Darwin's ideas permeated our memories of the 20th century. And some of these, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, you all know this, but many of these leaders who committed great atrocities against their own people justified what they did because they said it's scientific. It is justified, let the strongest live and the weakest die. And it's still happening today. You all know it's happening in our world right now, right this minute. This is why this is such a dangerous way of thinking. The problem is, and there's good news right around the corner here, the good news is that the facts don't support it. The facts don't support it. Our world is based on this idea of survival of the strongest, the way we treat one another, the way we grow our food, the way we deal with climate change, the way we share food, all of these things. Here's the good news. Over 400 peer-reviewed studies were done at the end of the 20th century asking one question. The question is this: what is the optimum amount of competition in any system, in the classroom, in the workplace, in the playing field? And when I say competition, I mean violent competition. I don't mean a friendly game of chess or soccer. What is the optimum amount? And all 400 studies came back with exactly the same answer. Take a guess. I'll just let you tell me. What is the optimum amount of competition? Absolutely. Look at this. Quote, the ideal amount of competition in any environment, that is a broad, sweeping scientific statement, in any environment, in the classroom, in the workplace, in the family, in the playing field, is none. Competition always, always, always is destructive. Nature is not based upon a model of competition. It may happen in nature. It's not the basis of nature. And competition always is destructive. In a very prestigious journal, New Scientist, look at this. This is a direct quote. What we see in the wild is not every animal for itself. Cooperation is an incredibly successful survival strategy. When cooperation breaks down, the results can become disastrous. And I think this is what we're seeing in our world today. A civilization, an global economic model based in a false assumption, survival of the strongest, competition, In this way, it's breaking down because it is not a sustainable way of living. Maybe it works for 50 years, maybe it works for 100 years. It's not sustainable in the long term. And this is the opportunity we have today. If we try to go back and fix and get back to the way that things were, it means we must embrace the thinking of the past. I don't think we want to do that. I could be wrong. I don't think that's what we want. What we now know is that nature is based on what is called a model of mutual aid and cooperation, not the competition as we've been led to believe. Nature is not based on that model of competition. Does that make sense? Did I say that okay? Okay. Well, we're doing pretty good. We can cross evolution and nature based on survival of the strongest. And I want to take a look at this idea of civilization because it ties into these ideas. Civilization. When I was in school, when you're in school, your kids in school right now, we're being taught that civilization, advanced civilization, it's about 5,000 years old. And we're being shown a model that looks something like this. Here's a little timeline. 5,500 years ago, ancient Sumeria, the Mesopotamian valley. More recently then was Egypt, the Indus Valley in India, Greece, Rome, everything we think of as history. This is what we're taught is the meaningful history of the world. And before this, we're led to believe it's like this murky, weird thing where not much was happening. The problem is that the facts don't support it. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I'm just going to go through this. I'm going to fly through this to give you an idea. The book talks about many more examples. What's happening is this. Archaeologists are finding, and they're publishing in peer-reviewed journals, evidence of sites that don't fit that model. Now, in the past, if you found one or two, you would call it an anomaly. And so you'd put it aside and you say, we'll come back and study it later. What's happening is there's so many anomalies, the anomalies are telling a new story. And there's a reluctance to share that story in mainstream media, but it ties right into what we're doing here today. So I'm going to share the anomaly, then share why it ties in, and then we're going to do something cool, and then we're going to do something fun, and then we'll have a break and then a special guest. We'll just do it like that. Some of the sites I've had the opportunity to document myself. This is a site in northern Peru. I documented it only, had the opportunity to visit June of 2010. This site is now peer-reviewed. Science accepts. This is the oldest site in all of the Americas. It's older than any Aztec site, any Olmec site, any Mayan site, any Incan site. It may be the bridge between the most ancient and those modern. If you say, where did the Maya get the information that they knew? We're starting to look at sites like this as bridging archaeological sites. This is called Corral. It's in northern Peru. It is a very desolate place. It's still being excavated. 5 pyramids have been found so far. 2 huge circular plazas. From the air, this is what they look like. Right there. These are huge sites. With all kinds of implied astronomy, mathematics, agriculture, architecture. But I want to share with you what has not been found here. No evidence of large-scale warfare. No evidence of any weapons have been found. No walls, no moats, no signs that the city was protected or needed to be protected in any way. No mass graves, no mutilated skeletons as you would expect to see in a large civilization like this. It is now being dated. Now, we're taught that civilization, 5,000 years old, is when it began. Primitively, that's when this one ended. This one ended 5,000. It's at least 7,000 years before present. At least 7,000 years, possibly older. So this is one example.